guys, Problem1701 here, and today we're going to discuss whether or not Fury from the Deep needs a special edition. Because I think it does. I really want them to redo Fury from the Deep, and I mean from the ground up. Now, I don't just mean like Power, where they keep some of the same stuff. No. Get a completely different development team, because I don't have the most faith in Big Gary Russell and Big Finish Creative. Although I am giving them, and I'm keeping an open mind with Galaxy 4. I'm hoping Galaxy 4, they've made some improvements. We'll see. But I would rather a different team tackle it, and I would rather it get the animation it deserves. Because Fury from the Deep, somebody in the comments mentioned something recently that really stood out to me, and I forget exactly how they phrased it, but they talked about how Fury from the Deep's animation wasn't bad, but that it wasn't a good fit for Fury from the Deep. And that really struck a chord with me, because while I still don't like that animation, I think even if it was on another story, it wouldn't bother me nearly as much as if it wasn't for the fact that that style of animation, that Scooby-Doo cartoonish animation style that looks comical and silly, certainly does not fit the tone of Fury from the Deep. Because Fury from the Deep is a very iconic story in Doctor Who. It's one of those ones everybody's wanted animated for a long time. When are we getting Fury? When are we getting Fury? When are we getting Fury? We're animating Fury. Yay! And then we get this. You know, and Fury from the Deep is one of those stories. It has that reputation for being scary, creepy, spooky, claustrophobic, atmospheric. You know, they're coming to get you, Barbara. You know, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You know, sentient seaweed taking over, possessing people. You know, it's in these kind of areas that are supposed to be claustrophobic and crammed in. Lots of tension. You can tell from the incidental music and some of the cliffhangers when you know there's something down there in the dark. It's meant to be a scary story. And the animation conveys none of that. None of that. I don't get creepy. I don't get atmospheric. I don't get anything. One, I don't like the fact that a lot of the areas they made wider, like the conference room, because this strikes me as a place kind of like a submarine. Everything's supposed to be crammed in. You know, they don't have a lot of extra space. So I don't like the fact they widened a lot of the areas here on these oil rigs and stuff. This strikes me as a place that's not supposed to be that big. So I wish they had condensed down the sets the way they probably originally looked in the 60s. Excuse me. The incidental music's really great in this story, by the way. And again, the animation doesn't fit it. And to really convey what I'm trying to say, all you have to do is compare the surviving live-action footage with its animation counterparts. A great example is that scene in episode 2 when the possessed Oak and Quill attack the woman while she's brushing her hair. And the live-action version of that is so good, so creepy, so well done. And then you turn around and you watch the animated version of it, and it's like a parody. It's nowhere near as good. It doesn't have that tension. It doesn't have that creep factor at all because of the style of animation chosen. Doesn't fit the story. It's nowhere near as effective, and I'm pretty sure the whole story is like that, where the animation just doesn't convey the parts. I don't like the little 8-directional character design models that's all we have. I don't like when Troughton laughs and it's like, I'm like, Troughton doesn't really look like Troughton, by the way, which really bothers me. You know, it's weird because animation to me can make or break. The animation style used can make or break an episode. Just look at the beating that the Fury from the Deep episode 3 is getting right now for its animation style used. A beating. Whereas on the other hand, like Macra Terror, I think has been reappraised in a lot of people's eyes because its animation is so good. Much like how Enemy of the Deep has been reappraised, Enemy of the World has been reappraised since those episodes have been found, and people think more of it now. I feel the same about Macra. I think a lot of people tend to like Macra more than before it was animated, because Macra was one of those stories I had never even heard of for the longest time. I didn't even know what the Macra were until I watched Gridlock. And then I had to research it. It's just not a story I ever heard people talk about, because the original version of Macra seemed to have just been a B movie, a kind of giant ants, giant crab, giant spider movie. Those B movies from the 50s, you know. My mother loves those things. nothing special. People didn't think much of the production. It just seemed like it was kind of thrown together, so nobody ever really talked about Macroterra. But I do feel like since the animation, because the animation was done so well, it took so many liberties to really invest in the story and make the story better, that Macroterra has been reappraised, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it. I really enjoy Macroterra. It's one of my favorite Troughton stories now. And it's because they put so much effort into the animation, whereas Fury from the Deep is the opposite. Fury from the Deep is held in such high regard by the fandom, and the animation doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It's nowhere near as good, and I think a lot of people were probably disappointed by it. Fury from the Deep is one of those just kind of holy grail stories that everybody wants the episodes to be found. But I think, going just by the animations, Macroterra pulls off creepy and scary better than Fury from the Deep. Because there are scenes in Macroterra that are really well done. Like at the end of episode 1 when the Macra comes out of the shadows, and you see the light kind of playing off it as it's walking. You just see those eyes coming out at first, and it just kind of looms over them. That's a great ending shot to episode 1. And then when the Macra attacks Ben and Polly and grabs Polly, how again you see the eyes first, how it creeps out of the shadows and grabs her. And how sometimes it's just shots of the arms and legs. When Jamie is down in the cave tunnels, I think that's done really well. I like how they changed in the animation where the one guy who gets killed, they don't find him. Jamie just finds his goggles, leaves it to the imagination where it just kind of grabbed him and ran off with him. I really love that choice. When Jamie has that one barreling down on him that ends one of the episodes, really good choice. Macroterra can be really creepy and scary in places because of how it executes the Macra. I really enjoy that. Whereas Fury from the Deep, it's the opposite. Because of the animation used and the choices made, I don't feel nearly as creeped out and spooked by it as I'm supposed to be by this story. Because I cannot get over that comical, silly look of the animation. And I get they were under a budget and a time constraint. I get that. But I personally would love to see a special edition of this. Now, I know the argument a lot of people will say is, no, we need to focus on working on the stories we haven't got yet. There's so many more we need to do. Fair, I get that. I do want to see the others come out as well. But, I mean, think about it. Would you rather get, a special edition of The Underwater Menace, which isn't exactly the best regarded story ever, or a special edition of Fury from the Deep with good animation, which, Fury from the Deep is much higher on the good stories list, let's say. So, you can get Underwater Menace, which I'm going to be honest, I don't have much interest in Underwater Menace. I mean, I'll get it when I order it, but I don't have much interest in it. Or I can get a really good version of Fury from the Deep. I'd rather have the Fury from the Deep special edition than the Underwater Menace special edition, because Fury from the Deep is such a good story, such a highly regarded story, and Underwater Menace is from what everybody says about it. So yeah, Fury from the Deep is something I want, even if it takes up a slot, simply because I would rather have a special edition of Fury from the Deep than some of the other stories. Now, I wouldn't want it right away. I still want to get like the Crusade, Marco Polo, of course eventually Dalek's Master Plan, but stuff like Mythmakers or the Savages isn't as high on my priority list. I'd rather get the Fury from the Deep stuff. But that's just me. I'd rather get the Fury from the Deep probably before I get Space Pirates, just because I really like Fury from the Deep, and I want to be able to actually enjoy watching it. I can't sit through it the last couple times I've tried to watch it, because the animation just makes me mad. And the longer time goes on, the more angry I get that I just feel like Fury from the Deep got screwed over, personally. So, and I would want definitely a different company to do the animation if they ever redo Fury from the Deeps. And I would want it redone from the ground up, Macroterra level quality. So what do you think? Do you think Fury from the Deep needs a special edition? Are you fine with the animation used? Do you like the animation used? Or do you think, maybe after they've gotten all the others animated, I'd like them to take another stab at Fury from the Deep? Let me know what you think about this video down in the comments below. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. I also have a Patreon if you would like to contribute to that. There is a link to that down in the description below. But most importantly, thank you for watching.